Welcome to Home Health 360, a podcast presented by Care. I'm your host, Jeff Howell, and this is the show about learning from the best in home health care from around the globe. Hey everyone, welcome back to Home Health 360, where we speak with leaders in home care and home health from across the globe. Today's guests are here to help you up your training and continuing education program for your caregivers. I have Allan Levine, the SVP of Growth and Revenue for Nevvon, a leading online education system to enhance the healthcare education sector and collect data to help home care agencies train caregivers fast, train them well, and help deliver the care we would want our loved ones to receive. Allan, I counted 6 educational degrees on your LinkedIn profile, including 2 MBAs. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And we also have James Cohen, the CEO of Nevvon, who is coming up on his 5th anniversary as CEO. James, I have to say that your LinkedIn company description on your profile is probably the best I've seen. I think it's about 8 paragraphs of storytelling and a description for the need in the industry that really hooked me in on what you folks do. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Jeff, for having us.
And then I also saw on your profile that you took a couple of courses on Coursera. It's not quite 2 MBAs, but we were still happy to have you on today, James.
Thank you.
So guys, give us a little bit of background. Who's Nevvon?
So myself, I've been in the healthcare industry for 21 years. The first decade was very much around brick and mortar facilities. And then about 10, 11 years ago, I founded a home care agency that provided care across 2 countries, United States and Canada, in multiple provinces and multiple states. I ended up exiting that business around 4.5 years ago, and that was ultimately sold to Bayada Home Care, which of course we all know. This company, Nevvon, was born with the idea of solving a pain point. When we were running Nevvon and we were operating it, clearly one of the biggest issues we had and still goes on today is around workforce issues, recruitment, retention, and of course, training. We had thousands of caregivers that we needed to train on a yearly basis. And we were doing it just like many of the agencies were doing it back in the mid-2010s, where we were bringing each caregiver into the office for 12 hours a year. As you can imagine, if you've got hundreds or thousands of caregivers that work for you, it's quite difficult to bring them all in. It's disruptive, it's broken, it's expensive, and it definitely does not create operational efficiencies. In 2017, the Department of Health came out with a new regulation that you can now do your continuing education, or otherwise known as in-services, online. And that's when Nevvon was born, or the idea was born, that we felt that we can create better training and have it faster, better, and cheaper for the home care agencies. And I'll let Allan introduce himself as to what he's doing here at Nevvon.
Allan Levine. I'm the Senior Vice President of Revenue and Growth here. So my career started in human capital management, actually. I started with a company called WorkBrain, who I'm sure some of your Canadian listeners will be familiar with. Kind of came up the ranks there, and for the last 15 years been in healthcare and fintech and working with high growth companies and helping them accelerate and grow. And that's a lot of what my role is here with Nevvon, is to help us to continue to grow, make sure that we're solving our customer pain points. And it's a fantastic industry to be back in after as a second stint.
It's surprising to me that it was as late as 2017 that everything sort of officially came online. Was there much in the way of online learning prior to 2017?
There was some online learning, but it was more of a nice to have where agencies wanted to upskill their caregivers, but from a regulation standpoint, which is a must have, that just wasn't regulated at that time. And in 2017, as technology got better and the efficacy of online training got better, the department had felt that it was good enough to now do your in-services online.
And I remember you saying to me one time, James, that one of the differentiators is you guys focus on snack size content. I'm curious, how would Nevvon differentiate itself in the market?
Yeah, so great question. I think the way we're different in the market than some of our competitors is that there are really two lines of business to what we do over here. There's the technology side and the education side, and we own both. And what that means is that we built our learning management system from scratch. As we know, there are many LMSs out there in the world, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. And when we looked at them to potentially host our content or educational content, what we quickly realized is that the LMS was not built, one, for the mobile workforce. As we know, in home care, our workers are in the field at all times. And two, for an industry or for the caregiver, home health aide worker who might have more challenges adopting to new technologies. These LMSs that we saw out there were more built for the desktop or for the laptop, and they weren't built simple enough for the caregiver to use. So we built our technology with the caregiver in mind. It's very caregiver centric. Everything is very simple to use. On top of that, when we want to create operational efficiencies between different softwares, we have APIs that can talk to other softwares that are synergetic in the industry. So, for example, Jeff, at your company at Allia Care, we can pull rosters of caregivers right into our system to know when they have to learn. And that makes it much easier from an administrative point of view. Instead of having the agency coordinators email us, a number of caregivers that have to do their training. And then, as we know, there's a big turnover in the industry. Let us know when they no longer work at that agency. Now it all happens in real time automatically with the APIs that we have with other softwares. So we have many other robust uses for the APIs, but we're able to do that because of our technology. And the second line of business is that we have within here is the education. We build all our education in-house. We feel that's probably our secret sauce. Our education is built in bite-sized lessons. We know most caregivers have to do 12 hours a year of learning. It's very difficult to take 12 courses, 1 hour each, when the home health aides or CNAs have different schedules. Their schedules are definitely not 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're all over the place. They're working weekends. They're working on Christmas. Healthcare, of course, doesn't stop. So we figured if we can build bite-sized lessons, which are anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes long, it's a lot more digestible to learn. We've done really well with that. Of course, we're multilingual. We teach our lessons in up to 9 different languages, and we have a very, very high adoption rate of our finishing of our lessons. And I think that's how it makes a difference.
So rather than me scheduling time and sitting down in front of my computer, I could be in my car waiting to start a shift and log into my mobile and do a 3-minute segment of a course right then and there.
Absolutely, Jeff. And even more so, if you're going into a shift as a home health aide and you're looking at your plan of care and you're realizing that this elderly person that you're caring for, it has a Hoyer lift and you might have not used a Hoyer lift in 2-3 years, you can now go into your Nevvon app, search Hoyer lift, and instead of being forced to watch an hour lesson on a Hoyer lift, which is not really realistic, you can watch a short lesson as a refresher as how to use one. So we see many of our caregivers in our data going back to refresh their learning and their teachings. And the hope is that with better training, they can hopefully deliver better care.
And the fact that you insource the production, so you guys are basically like a media education company. What's the norm in the industry? Like I'm just trying to figure out how other companies might outsource this, and can you bring us through like what the content catalog looks like?
Yeah, of course. So the way we do it is very stringent in terms of how we build our learning. We look at it from different points of view. There is a point of view of regulation. Every state has its own regulated content that has to be on the platform or the home health aide has to take. We look at it from a compliance standpoint. We look at it from a clinical standpoint. Of course, we don't want to teach any caregiver anything that's wrong. So we want to make sure that clinically it's correct. But maybe the most important thing we do is our instructional designers. If you've never heard that term, instructional designers are exactly what it says. They're the ones that design instruction. And the way they design the instruction is they look at, okay, what are we learning? What are we teaching? Who is the learner? And what do we feel the best way to teach this method so the caregiver can retain that knowledge? Because of that, we have different modalities of training. So we have animation, we've got green screen, we've got actors, we do gamification. We try to keep it interesting so the caregivers can be engaged and learn in the best way possible, rather than have a nurse in front of a blackboard speaking for 12 hours. We feel those modalities of training will really help the caregiver be more engaged rather than press play, walk away, and not really learn anything.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure you guys know one thing that's really popular these days is cohort-based learning, because a real challenge, we deal with this challenge internally too, is you get this LMS, you get tons of content, you think it's going to solve all the problems, and then it's like people's habits have to change, and people have to proactively dedicate time to investing in themselves.
100%.
So what's your market? I presume the biggest market would be private duty home care, but do you guys also service the Medicare world, facility-based care? Like what, give us a sense as to the market share and the sort of target customer that you guys go after.
Yeah. So historically, it's been the Medicaid and the private pay world. Let's call it the non-medical caregiver. Of course, we all hate that word, the unskilled caregiver. So we'll call it the non-medical caregiver, is who historically we are training. In 2023, we have some beta customers in the Medicare world and the facility-based care. You're going to see our library rapidly expand into the Medicare world and the facility-based care coming into 2023. We have a very, very robust library for the Medicaid and private pay world. Not as big for Medicare and facility-based, but you'll see a huge ramp up in 2023.
And what would you guys say, like, what does the industry look like today? Because when I hear you say that the Department of Health, sort of officially cut the ribbon in 2017, saying we're now going to be sponsoring all of this, the in-services online, in effect, your industry is very young. And I'm curious, what does it look like in terms of how competitive it is, how many players there are, how quickly it's growing, what impact COVID has had?
So let's start at the top, right? So the industry overall, as I think we know, it's growing. The elderly population is getting older, obviously, and there's more of them coming in every day. So the population on the elderly side is growing. I think the last stat that I saw is something like 3 to 4 million aides in the market right now, and the need's going to be on the demand side of 7 million by 2025. They're in home care specifically, it's still very fragmented, and there's a lot of consolidation happening in the industry. As we know, there's a caregiver shortage right across healthcare, both in Canada and the United States, that everyone's dealing with. And the focus right now is, recruitment, retention. On the agency side, how can I save money? What type of administrative efficiencies can I create? And then when we kind of narrow it down to training, there's a lot going on. It's more than just compliance training now. The agencies that are doing better and well are focused more on upskilling, career advancement. What different value can we provide to the caregiver to make it an attractive place to work and make sure that they're successful in their role as an aide. COVID was, there was a move to online before COVID, and I think the shift was starting before COVID, and then COVID was really the accelerant, and it forced a lot of different agencies to make the move because they had no choice. And everybody was working from home, and these were frontline healthcare workers that still needed to do their compliance training or upskilling, whatever the need was. So a lot of agencies started to quickly adopt technology, including training during COVID. And now that, we're starting to come out the other side, we're in more of what we call kind of a hybrid type setup, where there's a situation where agencies are still adopting to online because they see how efficient it is and how standardized the content is and how much the aides enjoy learning online when it's fun and it's gamified and all the features and benefits that a company like us can provide. But as I'm sure, Jeff, as we were talking before we started to record, there's still a desire to go in class or into the office per se. So the hybrid model is where things are starting to land. So aides are doing training on a mobile platform, but they're still going into the office to do some, upskilling or whatever it is. People like to see faces, and it's important from a cultural standpoint as well.
Yeah, and people want to be part of a community as well. What is there a kind of a magic number in terms of, if we think that maybe there's 25,000 home care agencies in the United States, what percentage would you see as having a learning management strategy in place? And is there a size that they get to? Like, what size is this table stakes and you can't survive without it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, from our perspective, we still see it in our data where we'll see a prospect come to us per se. And we obviously, one of our qualifying questions is, how are you training your aides right now? And surprisingly, there's still a big chunk of them that say we're training in class. But we've heard how great this is, or we've heard somebody else told us, or they're a franchise and their franchise is saying, this is a move you should make, whatever it ends up being. I mean, if I had to put a number on it, I would say about 40 to 50% are still doing some form of online training, of in-class training. And that's just based on the data that we see. But more and more are picking up on the online side of things because it's so much more efficient, and the quality of the content is it's fantastic. An LMS fits pretty much any agency size. Obviously there's advantages. The larger you get, the bigger the advantages. The more complex your training needs are, just based on the sheer number of caregivers that you have and the number of locations. It's grossly inefficient to be doing stuff in class. You roll out an LMS, you can standardize your training, you can monitor your training, you've got reporting on compliance and who's completed training. All of the things that you need to do as an organization from a compliance standpoint can get tracked in a platform, which is a huge need and a must-have the larger you get. Outside of that, you've got the idea of rolling out new content. It's easy. It gets a caregiver can get notified on their phone when new content comes out. Our team will do some heavy lifting for you to work with the caregiver to get them to start and complete their training. So there's all sorts of efficiencies that are created from that standpoint for the large agencies. For the smaller ones, they're seeing benefits as well. So an example of that I can share with you is we're rolling out right now what's called our mentorship program. It's called Legacy of Care. And we've got some small agencies now that are approaching us saying, we want to roll out a mentorship program. We don't know how to do it. We love the product that you guys have from a mentorship standpoint. So can we roll out our mentorship program on the Nevvon platform while still keeping our training in class? They might have 10 or 20 caregivers, so they're in a position where they can bring their aides in once a day for one day, once a year, and take care of their compliance side of things. But they want to create a scalable mentorship program. So they're that's kind of their first step, or they're dipping their toe in the water in that hybrid type model. So it really fits any size agency, but clearly the larger you get, the more efficiencies that you are able to create.
I saw that Legacy of Care on LinkedIn. I was wondering what that was. That's great.
Yeah, it's a really cool program. It's something we're super excited about. Effectively, what we're doing is it's kind of a mentorship in a box. We work with agencies of any size to roll out a mentorship program where we've got some training pieces, we've got some toolkits and some exercises. We have this process that takes about, we recommend about 60 days. And there was a beta pilot that was run with 6 agencies in New York, and we saw an 89% retention rate in the first 90 days of hire. So something we're super excited to roll out, and that really has an impact on retention.
Well, exiting caregivers, the number one reason that they cite as to why they've left the agency is lack of communication. So in addition to getting the shifts they need, they also need to feel the love.
Yeah, definitely.
What trends do you guys see taking shape over the next 2 to 5 years?
I think that the workforce shortage, which we've been struggling and many industries have been struggling with, will continue to be the biggest issue in our industry. And what I think will happen is that even with the minimum wage going up in many states and forced wage parity solutions across other states, especially on the East Coast, we still will struggle to recruit new caregivers into our industry. And ultimately what happens is it falls onto the family caregiver. The care falls onto the family caregiver. And we're seeing different pilots happening across the United States where family caregivers can be trained and paid to care for their loved ones. We're seeing a really innovative one that's taking off in Colorado right now around mothers taking care of their children, which is really interesting. The consumer-directed program, especially out in New York, has exploded. That's where the consumer, which is the patient, is directing who their caregiver will be. And that's really taken off. We're seeing more and more pilots coming up throughout the country, and we think we'll see more and more of that. So training that family caregiver will be key. I think that's one trend we'll see over the next 2 to 5 years. And then finally, I think, our industry has been laggards in adopting new technologies. As we know, there has been billions of dollars invested in technology to service the home care world. I feel over the next 5 to 7 years, we'll see a lot of, or 2 to 5 years, I should say, we'll see a lot of agencies finally start to use the technologies that we've built for them and embrace them in a much better way.
Any tips, guys, on an agency looking to get the most out of their training program?
That's our bread and butter. It starts from the top down. There's no doubt about it. You can't, like you said before, you can't just buy an LMS, put content in, and expect people to go use it. You really need to have buy-in from management and your executive level right down in terms of rolling something like this out. You've got to set goals. From a compliance standpoint, that's obvious, right? Your training starts and completions is super important when you're thinking about compliance. But when you go beyond compliance training, it becomes a little bit less obvious. And I'm thinking about, to James's point about technology, a big part of what's coming in the next 2 to 5 years is data and value-based payments. So, if you're entering into the VBP world and you want to roll out some VBP training, what are your goals there? Is it outcomes-based? Is it something else? Is it trying to level up to a different level? Is it increasing customer satisfaction or patient satisfaction? What are your goals there? Or maybe it's specific to clients' needs around dementia. And I think agencies should really spend some time around what their goals are when it comes to training. Training in caregivers' native tongue, I think, is also something that really helps. We get it all the time. I mean, Nevvon translates to 9 different languages right now with more in development. And there's huge value there when a caregiver, and we all know what that caregiver persona is, if they can learn in their native tongue, be it Russian, Spanish, Korean, Mandarin, whatever it is, there's a huge benefit there that really does also lead to better care. Understanding your training needs just beyond compliance. I think surveying your population is something that's extremely important and leads to better feedback. What do caregivers want to learn? Caregivers should be more inclusive now as part of the agency to help with that culture and create that better culture. So survey them, ask them what they want to learn. Show the caregiver that training can lead to greater roles and responsibilities and celebrate those achievements. I talked about goals. A big push that we do that we've seen a lot of success with when we're rolling out agencies now is setting new hires from day one, helping them adopt technology, do it right in orientation, set the level, set the expectations, get them to download the AlayaCare app, get them to download the Nevvon app, start their training in the class, make sure that they understand, and mentor them. I talked about it before, but there's huge value if you can mentor your new hires. You're going to see higher retention rates, higher job satisfaction, and a lot of other net new benefits that we're seeing. Make it fun, gamify it, make sure that the learning isn't press play and forget it. It's interactive, it's fun, it's short micro lessons, learning's reinforced through quizzes, all of the things that lead to that better care. There's a lot of cool stuff now with technology. Some of the conversations, Jeff, that I've had with your team is around, obviously caregivers can train anywhere, anywhere, anytime with Nevvon, but when training is completed in Nevvon, it pushes a skill into AlayaCare. How can an agency use that skill to lead to a better schedule, as an example? Start to use the technology that they've got at their hands that's now, in that fancy term interoperability, to their advantage. Meet the needs of the caregivers using the technology that you have. I think are pretty hefty list, but that's where the agencies that are doing those types of things are the ones that we're seeing that are far more successful with their training.
Love it. What's the best way for an agency to knock on your door and get in touch, guys?
I'll put my sales hat on here, and you can reach us at nevvon.com, nevvon.com. You can reach out to me directly if you have any questions, and my email is Allan, Allan, @nevvon.com. Submit a form on the website. There's a partnership page on the AlayaCare app, AlayaCare website. We're pretty easy to find if you just Google Nevvon.
Well, I have a full page of takeaways here. I love doing these episodes because I always learn something new. I'm floored by really how you really the switch was turned on just 5 years ago for you guys. And it sounds like you guys are up to some super exciting things and going from 3 to 4 million aides up to 7 million by 2025. You guys have a lot of work to do to train those aides. Guys, thanks for coming on today. And now that we're sort of back to normal, I look forward to bumping into you guys at the next conference.
Thank you, Jeff, for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. This was great. Appreciate it.
Home Health 360 is presented by AlayaCare. First off, I want to thank our amazing guests and listeners. To get more episodes, you can go to alliacare.com/homehealth360. That's spelled home health 360, or search Home Health 360 on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. The easiest way to stay up to date on our new shows is to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a newsletter you can sign up for on alliacare.com/homehealth360 to get alerts for new shows and more valuable content from Allia Care right into your inbox. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.